I am DM Zone. This is Gamers Oasis. Let's get into it. So in this video, I'm going to talk about dwarves. Dwarves in original Dungeons & Dragons specifically. So dwarves can be fighting men, aka the fighters. They're called that within original Dungeons & Dragons and every edition after that. So I'm just going to call them the fighters after this. Dwarves can be fighters. This is found in the original, what I call the core books. Those are the three original books that came with the white box or the oak box or whatever you want to call it. In this box set, the book one, they say that dwarves can never be magic users and they cannot be clerics according to these books. However, later when supplement 1, Greyhawk, comes out, they did say that dwarves could become clerics as NPCs. It also says that they can become like a fighter thief type of thing. So I'm going to talk about more about thieves and dwarves later, but going into what book 1 says, under the section on page 10 called Changing Character Classes, it goes into specifics about what you need to be able to do that. What's interesting about this is the only one that could actually utilize this was humans. All the other demi-humans or the non-human classes all had to be whatever their specific class was. It's not like you could take a halfling and make it a magic user or a cleric. They're excluded from that. They're not like you could take dwarves and make them a magic user or a cleric. They're excluded from that. So when Supplement 1 came out and they came out with a thief, this was a way you could utilize this rule. So it is literally the cart before the horse in this situation. This gives you an idea of how much was happening on and off the table versus making it to the rules, and how you have to sort of take these as more of the spirit of versus the literal of. Rules lawyers would not need to apply in this situation, in my opinion. Dwarves were known and were represented as having very high levels of magic resistance. They counted as 4 levels greater than they actually were. So a 6th level Myrmidon dwarf fighter would count as a 10th level human fighter. The wording on that in the actual rule book, though that example is used, is wonky. I talked about that in the human book. The human video, if you want to watch that video and see what I say in there. You'll also notice that in that video, humans don't get any of the benefits that dwarves do. So all sorts of things like magic resistance is not there. They're the only one that is fully able to deploy the magic of a +3 Warhammer, which is explained in much better detail in book 2. I'm actually going to go into a video talking about specifics on magic items and this type of thing at some point in time in the future. This will be covered in there. But basically, the returning part for a dwarven thrower wouldn't happen unless it was in the dwarf hands. And a dwarf at a +3 weapon would only count as a +2 if it was in the hands of anyone other than a dwarf, essentially. Dwarves could also detect slanting passages, traps, shifting walls, and new construction underground in those type of settings. How? What that means? Kind of up for interpretation. People have come up with their own things. For example, I had dwarves finding it on a 2 in 6 chance, or like the elves having a 3 in 6 chance for their little thing they do better than anyone. But they don't really give statistics with it. They just say they do it better. Lastly, dwarves can speak several languages. Of them, you have gnome, kobold, goblin, in addition to their other languages they might get because of a higher intelligence, as well as dwarf, of course. They're described as being more interested in gold, but this is more of a pseudo-fluff Tolkien type of language, designed to separate them more from elves and dwarves and the magic users and all that type of other things that you might find through dwarves, and I didn't mean to, who are more interested in magic items, for example. And humans, which are interested in, I guess, other things, as well as magic items and gold. But, so that was more of why that was there. Dwarves also have 60-foot infravision, which was super big. Dwarves, unlike humans, might have restrictions on their level requirements. So, as I talked about in the human video, humans don't actually have a restriction. They go as high as they want to go. Dwarves cap out at a certain point and can't go any higher. So dwarves can get up to level 6 Myrmidon, which is a fighter. And that's it. In Supplement 1, they do get some bonuses for strength if they're a straight fighter. If they pick up the Thief, they can also get bonuses to open lock, remove traps, move silent, and hide in shadows. All very important things. Matter of fact, they have the highest remove trap bonus of any of the races. Humans, again, don't get any of that. In Supplement 1, it continues to be a great book for dwarves, as it has a correction in there talking about giant classes, which giant class isn't necessarily specific wording found in the rulebook anywhere. The closest you get is giant type, which is a bit ironic because even that's not complete in many ways and has a lot of ambiguity to it. But listed underneath giant types, you have the core basic giant types. You have the hill, the stone, the frost, the fire, and the cloud. Later, they came out with the storm. I bet that would be one that would fall under that. They also come out with titans, which are considered to be giants, but are not necessarily in that. A lot of these other ones are found in certain modules in strategic review design and those type of things. There's many designs, and later there was even a dragon magazine that came out that would have a lot of these extra or particularly possibly giant creatures. But if you were to read in book 2 about ogres, you'll find that ogres sort of count as giants in many ways, and I would definitely include them in a giant list. And if you were to continue that and look at trolls, it says that trolls count as giants, which then count as giants. So trolls count as ogres, which then count as giants. So where does this start and stop? Technically, if you're going to go down that road, the djinns and the freets also fall into that. Large insects, giant animals, titans and cyclopses also count as giants. Whether they have regeneration or not, I'm not sure. There's a huge amount of difference between a troll and an ogre. And if an ogre counts, a troll probably should. It does say ogres are stronger and get like a +1 to damage, which is pretty much unheard of in this version of the game. But I'll talk about monster stats and all that later, I guess. I would say, due to the rarity of freets and djinns inside your game, I would leave it. It leaves a more epic feel and all that type of stuff. But as I'll talk about later, there is a bit of a slippery slope when you go down this way of where do you start, what do you stop, when don't you do things. So maybe you just kind of go with the rules as you best know, or just come up with your own thing. So that said, dwarves get a lot of bonuses early. This is a benefit because most games don't go very long. To reach 6th level is pretty rare. And if you were to be a fighter thief, half your XP would go into one and half of it would go into the other. And then when you got to 6th level, half your XP would continue into the fighter, even though you're not leveling, and half of it would go to thief. Ironically, the thief section, the way I read it, is unlimited. So you could level as high as you want as a thief. You just had to only level half as fast as a human thief or a halfling thief who can just be a thief. I personally lump myself into the group that sees a straight dwarf thief as a problem. Being able to level just as a dwarf and not having level restrictions is a issue. I think the dwarf class or the race as it is designed needs to have that level 6 limit and the reduction of XP that having a fighter gives it, so that the other classes are going to be higher level. I like the idea of the thief not being limited. However, I really feel like you could throw a dwarf fighter cleric in there, or a fighter cleric thief in there, and it'd be just fine. And if you did that, it would be 1/3, 1/3, and 1/3. And that would be interesting. I don't know. You get more XP overall continuing on, but you get less XP to each class, making it very long to level as it is. The wording that I kind of rely on for this concept is simultaneously as a fighter and thief. Okay, so that tells me that there's not either or, that it's both. I only see the dwarf thief as being a fighter thief. To clarify this more, when you look at halflings, the wording for halflings, it says that it can be either a fighter or a thief, which is very different wording than the dwarf for sure, as I'm sure you can understand. And I think that if you're to have a dwarf fighter cleric, I see that as sort of a reward for good role play, or something of that nature, maybe a call to action. Your dwarf does something particularly grandiose with the god, and it becomes, at like 3rd or 4th level, a fighter cleric, and then continues on from there. I could see that. However, this is a bit of a slippery slope, like I said, and decisions that are outside of the scope of the game probably need to be heavily considered. And just to clarify, if your fighter side gets to level 6, which is the cap, and you continue to gain XP, half your XP still goes into that fighter side, which is part of the negative, I guess, of being such a powerful baseline class, which in all actuality I kind of like. It makes the uber powerful early classes feel better when they level up. Also, the farther you're into the fighter side, the less willing I'd be to change it into a fighter plus something else. The reason why that is you get in the first 6 levels, you got all the power, and then you're going into the other thing because you have nothing else to level in your fighter side. I feel like you really should have to equalize your XP almost before moving on. I'm going to get into Supplement 1 in its own video, but I kind of want to wrap up the Dwarf in saying if you're going to play any sort of fighting class, you need to get Supplement 1 Greyhawk. There are a lot of things that were added to that supplement that makes the fighter class so good. One of those is the increased levels, level 7 and 8, for having a 17 or an 18 strength, as well as increased open door chance and bonus damage for fighters. Again, this only qualifies, the bonus levels only qualifies to pure fighters. The fighter plus other wouldn't get that. But there's still a lot of benefits to that. Never mind being able to actually finally multi-class, as we would call it, or to simultaneously level as other things. So if you're going to play and you want to play a dwarf, consider getting the Greyhawk book, because it's a good book to get. In the reality of everything, it really helps a lot with your character, and having that correction that I spoke very early about and I never really got into. But the correction that they have in there is very, very important. So it gets, all dwarves get +1 to hit giant class creatures, and giant class creatures get -1 to hit you. And that is very powerful and should not have been saved for the very last. In conclusion, if you're going to play a fighter, play a dwarf. It's just better. Very few games go past 6th level, so why not play the most powerful version of it? If you do play a dwarf and make it to where the party goes past 6th level, don't worry, you're not out. You can still get a dwarven hammer +3. have yourself a nice thrower, and be the only one to be able to reap those benefits. So, yeah, pretty big deal. I think dwarves are a great addition to Dungeons and Dragons. They're very iconic, and they're one of my favorite races / classes, depending on which version of D&D you're playing. Throughout any of the versions I've played, and I have played many of them. So, anyways, guys, I hope you like this video. If you want to see more like it, let me know in the comments down below. Let me know the type of dwarf would you play. Which version of it would you play? Would you go dwarf thief or dwarf cleric or dwarf cleric thief? Which one do you think would be the best and why? Look forward to talking to you guys down in the comments down below. Hope you guys have a great day. Keep rolling those dice. Bye.